Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here because today we are taking a super fascinating, really emotional journey into the lyrics of Olivia Rodrigo's track, Honeybee. If you're someone who loves breaking down how language shapes emotion and how songwriters construct these elaborate narratives out of their absolute deepest feelings, you are definitely in the right place. Today, we're going to unpack how a seemingly simple love song actually hides these profound layers of vulnerability, healing, and that intense anxiety that always seems to pop up when you find something truly beautiful. So let's digest the architecture of these lyrics together. Now, I want to hook you immediately with the very first line of the song because this establishes the incredibly high emotional stakes of literally everything that follows. The speaker doesn't start off by talking about how wonderful and perfect love is. No, they start by acknowledging deep, profound pain. Time can heal even the worst of wounds. By bringing up the worst of wounds right out of the gate, we instantly understand that this new romance isn't just happening in a vacuum. It's blooming in the messy aftermath of some serious heartbreak. And the speaker is genuinely surprised by this. They followed it up with, I guess that it's true, meaning they were previously operating under the pretty bleak assumption that they couldn't be healed. It frames the entire song not just as a sweet romance, but almost like a rescue mission.
Okay, let's dive into this first major theme, healing from past wounds, and how the song moves beyond those typical cliches.
So the lyrics establish this powerful baseline of past hurt, for sure. But they also do something incredibly clever with the whole concept of the cliche itself. The speaker admits that the romantic cliches they used to roll their eyes at suddenly seemed so commonplace the second they saw this new person. Just look at the stark contrast in the language being used here. We start out with the worst of wounds, which is heavy, right? It's dramatic, it's steeped in lingering pain and cynicism. But then, suddenly, the song introduces the phrase, baby boy, honeybee. It's light, it's playful, it's incredibly sweet. The arrival of this new love acts as this jarring, wonderful pivot from these dark, heavy burdens to the buzzing, effortless lightness of a honeybee. It completely rewrites the speaker's worldview. It really shows us how incredibly fast love can just completely change our internal vocabulary.
And that sudden lightness builds perfectly into our next theme, the imagery of the intimate present and building safety through the mundane. To make a love song actually feel real, a songwriter has to bring it down to earth. And Rodrigo does this so beautifully through these vivid little micro moments. After starting with those massive, grand statements about time and wounds, the narrative shifts drastically to ground this sweeping romance in absolute, undeniable reality. Walking in the dark, hopping the park fence, the really specific sensory detail of a sticky sweet tangerine, the sudden rush of shooting stars and racing cars. This brilliantly illustrates that breathless, rapid-fire feeling of falling in love. Because think about it. When you're swept up in a new romance, you don't necessarily remember the big philosophical conversations. You remember the taste of a tangerine or the thrill of jumping a fence together in the middle of the night. It's this collage of small kinetic memories that creates a hyper-realistic picture of two people just existing together, finding magic in the totally ordinary. The speaker even drops the line, "Man, it feels like God threw me a bone," which is just such a beautiful, casual way of expressing sheer disbelief at their own stupidly good luck. Now, I want you to listen closely to this specific couplet because it carries so much thematic weight. In the dark, I'm not scared, I just reach and you're right there. Think about what the dark usually represents, whether it's in literature or even just your typical pop song. It's the unknown. It's a place of fear, isolation, hidden dangers. But right here, the physical space of the dark completely transforms. It goes from a place of fear to a place of ultimate safety. And why is that? Because of proximity. The simple physical act of reaching out and finding that other person immediately neutralizes the fear. It's a stunningly simple yet profound way to communicate absolute trust. But what happens when that trust and love becomes so immense that you literally can't find the words for them anymore? Well, that brings us to our next section, the limits of language and metatextual vulnerability. It prompts a really profound question for all of us, honestly. How do you describe the indescribable? When an emotion entirely outgrows the dictionary, what tools are you actually left with? Take a second and just think about a time you felt something so deeply that trying to talk about it just felt cheap or inadequate. This is exactly the emotional wall the speaker is hitting in the pre-chorus of the song. It primes us for a moment of intense, stripped-back vulnerability where the narrative steps back and actually examines its own inability to articulate these feelings. And here is exactly how she addresses it. It's too hard to describe this in a way that feels honest. This meta-lyrical moment reveals the speaker's raw earnestness. She is so fiercely protective of the integrity of this love that she absolutely refuses to cheapen it with forced, inauthentic words. Instead, she chooses quiet sincerity. The lyric follows up with, "But even when I'm quiet, I love you, baby, I promise." She leans into the silence. The silence itself becomes the truest expression of love. It's a powerful realization that true honesty sometimes requires just admitting that language has totally failed you. But unfortunately, as we all know, with immense love comes immense vulnerability. And this brings us to the emotional climax of the song, the fear of leaving. So, if we trace the emotional arc so far, we've gone from past pain to this sweet present reality to indescribable affection. But now, the human brain kicks into protective mode. We hit a terrifying realization. Deep love inherently risks devastating loss. The crucial point here is the contrast. The lyric, "I hope I never see what your face looks like going," represents the underlying anxiety of a good thing ending. The very thought of the partner turning their back and walking away is physically agonizing to the speaker. But contrast that immediately with the very next line, "A face I swear that I could spend my whole life knowing." This is the ultimate desire for lifelong permanence. The chorus operates right on the razor's edge between these two extremes, the desperate, lifelong yearning for the person paired with the paralyzing fear of their departure. So how do you deal with that? This intense internal conflict demands a resolution, which leads us to our final thematic section, a love built on hope and the lingering anchor. How exactly does the speaker reconcile the joy of the present with the sheer terror of potential loss? Well, she finds a lingering anchor in one simple phrase, "Here's to hoping." This phrase is repeated at the end of the choruses, and it acts as the emotional anchor for the entire track. It is a toast to the unknown. By saying "here's to hoping," the speaker is actively accepting the risk of loss for the chance at lasting intimacy. It's an honest acknowledgement that there aren't absolute certainties in love, right? The partner might leave, the face might turn away. But rather than retreating back into the safety and cynicism of those worst of wounds from the very beginning of the song, the speaker raises a metaphorical glass. They choose optimism. They choose to surrender to the experience, whatever happens. Which leaves us with this final, really lingering thought to close out our explainer today. If love is always accompanied by the fear of loss, is it actually worth the risk? Olivia Rodrigo's Honeybee makes a compelling, poetic case that yes, it absolutely is. Through vivid mundane imagery, confessions of linguistic failure, and a remarkably brave surrender to hope, the lyrics map out a beautiful blueprint for taking the leap anyway. I highly encourage you to go read through the lyrics again with these emotional frameworks in mind. It totally changes how you experience the whole story. Thank you so much for joining me to dive deep into this today. Keep exploring, keep analyzing, and I'll see you in the next explainer.